Would you look at that? The Edmonton Oilers remembered how to score at even strength. They should do that more often.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Victory Friday edition of Locked On Oilers. I'm your host, Zararis. This is my 10th season doing digital hockey content, my third as a host here on the Locked On Podcast Network, and I want to thank everyone that is making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one streamed sports podcast network. And on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, where if you use your profit boost on an NBA future, you'll get entered for a chance to win a trip for two to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. On today's show, we are going to walk through that 8-1 victory over the San Jose Sharks. We will start out from the perspective of the dam finally breaking, when you finally get something to feel good about, why it was able to go the way it was tonight, why the Oilers had success. Our second segment, we'll talk about exhaling, we'll talk about falling in love with the process, and then final segment, we'll talk about what it means to get into the nitty-gritty. The stretch run is here. The trade deadline is a week away. So with all of that said, to set the tone, coming out of the game last night, I desperately needed a good game from the Oilers. Coming out of the loss they suffered to the Ducks, where it would have been one thing if they lost in overtime. It would have been one thing if they suffered a devastating injury or the vibe was off. But they just melted down. There's no excusing the loss to the Ducks on Wednesday night and looking at this game and feeling congruity there. The Oilers are capable of playing pretty good hockey when everything is going well. And granted, it's tricky to get everything to go well. That's part of what makes the sport interesting, is that there is so much variance game to game, night to night, even amongst good players. But tonight, you got your ideal formula if you're the Edmonton Oilers. Your goal, if you're the Oilers, is to start eking out even strength offense. You get a game like tonight where you hang an 8 spot on the Kings, who are a good defensive team, who have Darcy Kemper, who has been, I should say, one of the 10 to 15 best goalies in the league over the last 5 to 10 years. He has a Stanley Cup ring to his name. He was an Olympian for Canada in Milan over the last few weeks. This is a really good goalie, and the Oilers outright ran him from the game. Whether it was Jim Hiller who pulled him or Kemper himself, who asked out of the game, Anton Forsberg had to come in midway through the second because the Oilers had put this game out of reach. At 5-1, the Oilers were in firm control. And what I loved about this effort from the Oilers tonight is not only did you get depth scoring, did you get defenseman goals, and 3 of them at that, you got to your game relatively quickly, and you made the Kings uncomfortable. This is a Kings team that played last night as well, second half of a back-to-back for both of these teams. You wanted to see the Oilers come out with some enthusiasm, with some aggressiveness. Last night could have very easily been a deflating, demoralizing victory that has everybody sulking, and you start walking around with a black cloud over your head. You keep walking around waiting for something to go wrong. And tonight, the Oilers, much to their credit, got off to a fast start. And look, last night, the Oilers got off to a fast start too. Jack Roslovic scored 13 seconds into the game, and the Oilers rested on their laurels, and the Ducks, who are a really talented team, definitely more talented than the Kings, were able to storm all the way back. They were able to mount a really impressive comeback, whereas tonight, the Oilers scored early, and they scored often. The Emberson goal is really nicely sequenced together. It starts out with a play in the Oilers' own end. They break up ice cleanly. You get contributions down the lineup. It starts with the Savoy pass. Savoy has been, I would dare say, the best non-McDavid Draisaitl player the Oilers have had over the last 2 nights. I thought Savoy, frankly, was their best player in the game against the Ducks last night, and Savoy, again, had a nice contribution to get the scoring going. He also, ironically enough, was the one who facilitated the Roslovic goal last night, which opened the scoring. He also facilitated the first goal tonight. And then you get the Podkolzin goal, and the Podkolzin goal tells me Darcy Kemper's a little rusty. I think anytime if you're a goalie, and we know goalie is a fickle position, we know it's a timing position, we know it's a rhythm position. We generally know that when it comes to these bell cow starters, they want work. They want to see shots consistently. They want to ease in. And as hard as Canada might have practiced, nothing Darcy Kemper did in his 2.5 weeks in Italy was going to be anything close to playing in an NHL game. And I do think you saw Kemper look rusty. The Podkolzin goal needs to be stopped. Podkolzin's got a decent shot, but that puck cannot go under your arm as a goalie. That is not an NHL caliber goal. And that's where it starts to get hairy. That's where it starts to get dicey. And then you get a Mangiapane goal, and look, as one of like the 6 guys who really likes Andrew Mangiapane as a hockey player at this point, we'll take what we can get. To get him on the sheet when everybody in the world knows the Oilers are trying to trade him ahead of next Friday's deadline so they can go out and make a trade. You know, it's an awkward position for Mangiapane to be in. I do think there's a world where the Oilers could potentially sit him ahead of the deadline to not risk him getting hurt, being that they need to trade him if they would like to be able to make a move come the deadline. Now, look, if he gets injured enough to go on LTIR, and it's a different conversation about how you want to manage the cap going into the playoffs and all of that. But you look at this situation, you got him on the sheet, and that is essential. You know, after he had scored the goal down here on the American feed broadcast, because it was a national game on ESPN, they cut to Mangiapane on the bench and they showed him let out an audible sigh of like, okay, I still know how to do that. And as somebody who loves the process, as somebody who loves digging in the weeds, seeing guys like that have little moments, it matters. You know, when we're talking about romanticizing the game, falling in love with the game, it's little things like that. This guy is not having a season he expected. He thought he was going to sign in Edmonton, get to ride shotgun with McDavid or Draisaitl, and he would get to put up good counting stats and maybe chase a Stanley Cup, and then next summer he could go to a lower quality team, get a 3 or 4 year deal, and cash out one last time. Instead, it has not gone to plan. He is almost certainly going to be traded ahead of next Friday's deadline. David and Draisaitl picked it up. The McDavid goal, where he just outweights the goalie, is the type of stuff you do in the ASHL when you're messing around at 2 a.m, where you just keep waiting and waiting and waiting. And the fact that the Kings were that out of position, McDavid was able to hold on for that long, told you the game was effectively out of reach. You got a Draisaitl goal in there as well. You got a pair from Wallman. Everything comes up Oilers. You get McDavid over that 100-point threshold. He sets a record. It's really one of those things where you sit back, you take a deep breath, and you got to smile. McDavid is... I know everybody wants to get on him for the Olympics. The only guys with more 100-point seasons than him in the history of the sport are Mario Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky. He will most certainly pass Mario Lemieux. He needs, I think, 2 more to pass Mario. Is he going to pass Gretzky? He needs 6 more to tie, 7 to pass him. It's not implausible for McDavid to continue to play at a super high level to 36. But 100 points is a lot. And look, we'll see. But tonight, something the Oilers desperately needed. And speaking of, we're going to take our first break on today's edition of Locked On Oilers. When we come back, I'm going to dive into why one win doesn't mean everything, but it can mean something right after this. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inboxes overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still open when the pressure's on and you need the right hire. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Indeed sponsored jobs help you reach the people who fit what you're looking for with skills, experience, and a location nearby. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I'm going to talk to you about Indeed, companies like yours have made 27 hires according to Indeed's personal worldwide data. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all of the boxes. Less stress, less time more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show can get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this show. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is the job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Cold days, packed schedules, big goals. That's winter. And when there's not a lot of time to cook, eating well can just feel like another thing to do on the to-do list. And that's where our friends at Factor come in. Factor makes healthy eating easy with fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs so you can eat well without the planning, prepping, or cooking. Factor meals are always fresh, never frozen, and ready in about 2 minutes. The ingredients always stand out. Lean proteins, colorful veggies, whole foods, and healthy fats. No refined sugars, no artificial sweeteners, and no refined seed oil. There's tons of variety with hundreds of rotating meals, including options like high protein, calorie smart, Mediterranean diet, GLP-1 support, and even the new Muscle Pro collection for strength and recovery. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 off and use code LockedOnNHL50 off to get 50% off and free breakfast for a year. Eat like a pro this month with Factor. New subscribers only, varies by plan. One free breakfast item per box for 1 year while subscription is active. Thank you so much to everybody that is hanging out on this Victory Friday edition of Locked On Oilers, where we are walking through the Oilers 8-1 win. If you're enjoying it as much as I am and you're around these parts often, you got to get in the mix of the Everydayer Club. It costs you a couple of bucks, but if you sign up using code DEADLINE before the trade deadline next Friday, you'll get your first month in the club for free. You can get access to the show ad-free on your preferred audio format podcast platform, and you get access to the Everydayer Discord server where Locked On's experts like me and Everydayers like you are cutting it up about their favorite teams and leagues. So continuing on, something I've really come around on, and it's a hard reality when you're someone like me who was really good at school, but school is one type of skill set. And when things come easily to you, generally, it can be really challenging to embrace doing things that don't. It can become very demoralizing and frankly, outright impossible to break through. When something is challenging, I at times will just refuse to engage with it because I am not good at it, as opposed to laying down in it, sucking at it, and figuring it out. Now, in the context of the sports world, this is a results-based business. We are going to crown a team with the best trophy in all of sports come the last week of June. Some captain across this league is going to hold that beautiful piece of silver over their head. It's about 38.5, 39 pounds, and it's going to feel weightless. It's going to feel like holding a pillow over their head because it is something they have worked for their entire life. And something I have been guilty of at times on this show, especially over the last week or so, coming out of the Olympics and really starting to wrap my head around the playoff race, where they're going. I have been a little bit too caught up in the end result as opposed to the process. It is absolutely essential in any walk of life, in any profession, to love the process. Anytime you are too preoccupied with the end result, you are not going to get there as smoothly as you would like. Now, there are going to be ups. There are going to be downs. I have been on this show for 3 months now saying, I don't think the Oilers are that good. I think they're probably maybe win a round in the playoffs, if that. I think they are not in the same weight class of teams as the team in the teams in the Central Division. But at the same time, we saw the Oilers play not possum, but effectively possum down the backstretch of the regular season last year, where they didn't play particularly good hockey in March or April. They were dealing with a lot of injuries. They had guys sit out games, and they came in, and it took a little bit of luck. The Jim Hiller challenge in Game 3 in the first round of the playoffs against the Kings absolutely spurred them on, and they got back in, and ultimately they won that series in 6. But you have to understand where I'm coming from. And the reason I'm talking about process in this episode, this is an example of when things work out for you. And when I say process and I talk about process versus results, the process is what you are doing. The end result is the totality. You won 8-1 tonight. So what was the process? You scored a couple goals off the rush. You ran their goalie early. You let McDavid and Draisaitl cook and put this game away. And that was your deciding factor. Now, when we talk about it in the context of a long season, which 82 regular season games, and we're going up to 84 next year, don't you forget, 84 regular season games starting next year. That is a marathon. And I always think about this quote, and I forget who it's attributed to. The happiest a man is going to be is the day before the best day of his life, because he's going to sit there in anticipation and think about that. That's what I mean when I say we're too caught up in the result and not enough in the process. The Oilers' process this year has not been very good. At even strength, they are still a net negative. Their power play is the only thing separating this team between good and the abyss. This power play, being the best in the league, is the only thing sustaining the Oilers right now. Now, you got a good Connor Ingram start. You got depth scoring. Everybody gets to feel good about themselves. These are all great things. If you're in that locker room, especially after the way the game against Anaheim went, you should feel good about yourself. It's important that you allow yourself to appreciate wins like this. I'm talking to you too, everydayers, and I'm talking to you too, casuals, and I'm talking to you too, people who are listening for the first time. It's okay to enjoy wins. You know, you should want to enjoy winning. There is nothing better in sports than picking up a W, getting to sit there, and if you're like me, you sift through the game columns, you listen to the podcasts, and you want to bask in the win a little bit. You want to hear everyone talk up your team. You want to feel a little bit better about yourself. I have a book over there on the shelf right next to me, written by a sociologist from, I think it's the University of Wisconsin, who did a study about the way we identify with sports and the impact of sports on our self-esteem. And it's what animates people. It's why anytime there are power rankings of any kind, there are people who are there to rush to the defense of their team, of their player, of their coach, of their GM, because there is a direct correlation there between how we feel about our teams and how we feel about ourselves. The better our team is and the better the perception of our team is, that reflects positively on us. It gives us more self-esteem. It makes us feel better about ourselves. So it's important that you allow yourself this small victory. Now, we're not going to go crazy. We're not popping bottles for a regular season win against a team the Kings trending in the wrong direction, but you're allowed to feel happy about this. You're allowed to take a deep breath and say, okay, we didn't solve all our problems. We still have a lot of work to do, but this is a good win. You got depth scoring. Your goalie didn't have to do a lot. Connor Ingram was able to build some confidence tonight. Someone like Ty Emberson, who may or may not be in the lineup consistently down the stretch, depending on what happens ahead of the trade deadline, maybe he plays with a little more confidence and can play his way into a permanent spot in this top six of the defense. Those little things ultimately are going to decide it. Is Mangiapane scoring a goal going to get him traded? Probably not. Most NHL teams know that even if he's not very good or he's struggling, he's going to occasionally find the back of the net. That's just the nature of the sport. You play enough minutes, you will score, unless you're someone like Matt Rempe. But different conversation for a different show. We are going to take our second and final break on today's edition of Locked On Oilers, and we're going to dive into a little bit about what the trade deadline means a week away, right after this. Have you ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about what team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock in. I love futures this time of year, whether it's picking a team to win the title or grab a conference title. It adds an extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now, not only can your pick cash out, it could send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you so much to everybody that is hanging out on this Victory Friday edition of Locked On Oilers, making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. And in the context of the trade deadline, it's going to get really spooky here in really short order. You have a handful of teams across this league that have tried to delay the inevitable. They have kept kicking the can down the road. They have kept telling themselves, we're not that far out of it. We're only 6 back. We're only 7 back. And with 22, 23 games to go, making up 7 to 8 points is going to be a real challenge. It's going to require 750, 800 points percentage hockey down the backstretch. And even if you want to do some rough back of the envelope math, you think about 20 times 0.8. You're talking about 16 out of 20 possible standings. You are talking about as challenging of stakes as possible. You have to consider the fact that if you need to win 8 out of every 10 games down the stretch, you probably haven't been that good of a team the first 57, 58 games of the year. So trying to win at that clip 8 out of 10 is basically impossible. And I start there because those are the teams that define the deadline. Teams like the Rangers that are waving the white flag, they already traded away Panarin. We've heard Trocheck, we've heard Schneider. Teams like the Canucks, who have already been looted for parts. The Calgary Flames, who traded Rasmus Anderson. We have a handful of identified teams who have waved the white flag and said, we can't even get close to a playoff spot. We are not entertaining this any further. But next Friday, you're going to have teams that are just on the outside looking in, like the Florida Panthers, who are 8 back of the last playoff spot, like the Flyers, who are 8 back of the last spot, the Leafs, who are 8 back, the Devils, who are 13 points back of the last playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. Then you kick it out west. Seattle's at 63 points. They're in the last playoff spot. Sharks are probably the last team that can seriously consider themselves in the mix. They're about 5 back. You have Calgary, who's 9 back. And I think at that point, we already know Calgary has made the Rasmus Anderson trade. I know there is a market for Blake Coleman. We'll see if that comes together. And we know teams have been asking about Nazem Kadri, even though there's been some reluctance from their owner, Murray Edwards, to part with him. We know the Jets, we know the Blackhawks, we know the Blues, and the aforementioned Canucks are all going to entertain things. We have heard both Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou's name on the market, not as being shopped, but teams having had checked in on them. We know the Canucks already traded Kiefer Sherwood. They could stand to make some more moves there as well. And I bring these teams up because these are the teams that make the moves. Now, you are going to watch a really intense game of musical chairs unfold. The Kings could conceivably trade Panarin again. Now, we know that's not going to happen because of the no trade clauses and the 2-year deal he signed to stay there, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. And I bring that up because you look around the market, who are the impact players? Vincent Trocheck, Alex Tuch, and we know Buffalo is not going to trade Alex Tuch because they want to break their playoff drought. They'll deal with the consequences of if Alex Tuch were to leave in free agency come July 1st. That's a team that just wants to get in. You look at teams like Buffalo, like Detroit, who are embroiled in long-term playoff droughts. You look at a team like Montreal that is on the cusp and almost ready to call itself a contender. You look at a team like Carolina or Tampa Bay that has been lingering around the periphery for a while now. In Tampa Bay's case, they have retooled around their core and look poised to be a Stanley Cup caliber team. Again, we know Carolina has been aggressive the last number of years in adding at the deadline, probably their biggest move being Jake Gensel a couple of years ago. The Penguins, they made the Samuel Girard trade, which I think was a really shrewd move for them. You look around, there are not a lot of exciting pieces to get juiced up about. There aren't any elite players out there that we know of. Now, weird things happen. Boston traded Brad Marchand at 3:58 p.m. last year on deadline Friday. It's not out of the question that somebody we're not expecting to get moved does. But at the same time, if you're the Oilers, and reportedly the Oilers' focus has changed, that they've pivoted from a top 6 forward to looking for a right-handed defenseman, the options are really slim. I am not somebody who's going to get all excited about Tyler Myers. I think at this point in his career, Tyler Myers is a 6th defenseman. If you are a team that has Stanley Cup aspirations, you probably don't play someone like Tyler Myers because his puck skills and his hockey IQ are just not where they need to be if you're going to be a good team. You know, Zach Whitecloud is someone I would be interested in, but it's hard for me to envision a world where the Flames and the Oilers are going to trade directly. Braden Schneider is the epitome of overrated. I can tell you authoritatively, he is not a good handler of the puck and would not fit. He's probably worse than Ty Emberson, and I think Emberson's actually kind of good. I think the Oilers really undersell what Emberson is, and I think he could do an awful lot, and I would really like to see him get some serious run come playoff time. I think he has shown more than enough over the last year and a half, 2 years, where he hasn't always been in the lineup, but it's not flashy, but he moves well. He's in a good spot most of the time. I would love to see more of that. And I bring up Emberson because if it's true that they are looking at another defenseman, you gave Jake Wallman a contract worth $7 million per year going into the future. You gave Ekholm an extension. You gave Bouchard an extension. You have the Nurse contract. Your top four is pretty locked in, which means Regula, Spencer Stastny, and Ty Emberson, 3 guys for 2 spots. And we know the Oilers, if they're going to add another guy, that's 4. Unless they trade one out, which they very well could trade one of Emberson or Stastny out. They did give up a 3rd-round pick for Stastny. And look, I think the problem for the Oilers, and I've said this about their forward group as well, I think a lot of these guys are decent. I think in the right role, Spencer Stastny is a really good 6th defenseman. I think Ty Emberson could potentially be a 5th or even, dare I say, a 4th defenseman. I think Alec Regula, traits-wise, has a lot to offer, but the Oilers aren't a patient hockey team. They don't give guys time to figure it out. Even if the underlying numbers are good for Regula and Nurse, they've scored 26% of the goals in the minutes they've played together. That's not good enough. So with those thoughts in mind, we know this is a team that needs help. There is no player available at the deadline right now that is going to make a massive impact. More often than not, and we talk about this all the time about the deadline, it is the team that adds the cherry on top of the sundae as opposed to the team that is out there looking for the ice cream to build the sundae around that makes the deep playoff run. You can point to pieces like Arturi Lehkonen getting added to Colorado. You can point to Barclay Goodrow and Blake Coleman getting added to the Lightning. You can point to Ivan Barbashev in Vegas. Last year, Marchand and Seth Jones, too good for that consideration. Tarasenko the year before would qualify, though, for the Panthers. And it's a double-sided coin there. It's two-sided coin. You need those guys to put you over the finish line because your stars are already so good. That's the key. That's the secret sauce. That was the lesson from the 2026 Winter Olympics. Yes, depth is great, but that pushes you over the finish line. If you don't have the star power to put you in a position for the depth to drag you over the edge, you don't have it. It doesn't matter how good your depth is if you don't have the big boys. Right now, the Oilers' big boys are doing all they can. They need more depth, and they're going to have to get resourceful here. They don't have a lot of cap space to play with. There's going to be some salary shenanigans. They only were able to dress 17 skaters tonight because they couldn't, under the salary cap, dress 18. That'll do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. Thank you so much to everybody that made Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or over on YouTube. If you are interested, details for the Everydayer Club are down in the show notes. And if you use code DEADLINE ahead of next Friday's deadline, you'll get your first month free, get ad-free episodes of the show on your preferred audio platform, and access to the Everydayer Discord server. If you are listening, we send you to the Locked On NHL Game Night show on the NHL feed. If you're watching over on YouTube, we send you to the first ever 24/7 national Locked On YouTube channel. I will talk to you guys on Monday. Everyone have a safe and fun weekend. Until then, let's go Oilers.